Jonathan and Charlotte's amazing performances on Britain's Got Talent in 2012 made them superstars, but the pair split up after becoming global celebrities. What actually transpired between the two of them has been a mystery to many. Did their fame get in the way of their relationship, or did they have a covert feud? Insider knowledge has finally come to light after years of conjecture, and it has always been there in front of fans. You would believe Jonathan Antoine, who sings with Jonathan and Charlotte, was born into a family of opera singers based on his powerful tenor, but that isn't the case. Neither of Jonathan's parents sings classical music. His mother was a homemaker, and his father was a police inspector. Because of something he had to deal with that nobody, not even his parents, knew about. Jonathan was a shy youngster. He therefore found social connection difficult, and he lacked confidence when interacting with others. Other than that, though, Jonathan's life was as typical as it could be, until he started attending West Hatch High School at the age of 11. He met Charlotte Giaconelli at West Hatch. She was the same age as him, but different. She was more gregarious, confident, and able to handle people with ease. Despite this disparity, the two became close because of their talent, which was recognized by Jeanette, the head of music, and Jenny Ewington, the singing coach at their school. Ewington started to instruct them. However, Jonathan's superior talent was evident. Jonathan's skill developed and changed under Ewington's guidance. He could sing freely with Ewington without worrying about criticism, and he quickly started to view her as a friend rather than his teacher. But there was an obstacle in the way that would ruin the tranquility that music brought him. At the age of 13, Jonathan's voice broke as he approached puberty. Ewington, however, was prepared for this. She guided Jonathan through this stage of development. She and Jeanette trained Charlotte in the same way that she trained Jonathan. The two quickly rose to the top of their school's vocal rankings. Of the two, Charlotte was more adept at dealing with the crowd. Jonathan needed to overcome his timidity if he was to reach his full potential. In order to help him get over his nervousness, Ewington also started encouraging him to play at music festivals when he was in front of people. At the 2010 Stratford Music Festival, Jonathan was terrified, but he kept his training in mind and gave an enthralling performance. But his best was not yet done. His voice mesmerized the audience during the East London Music Festival, preventing them from moving. He received Young Musician of the Year because of his soul-starving performance. He also gave a performance at the Rotary Youth Makes Music event in London's Royal Festival Hall in 2011. In order to help him completely overcome his shyness, Jeanette urged him to perform in concerts after the events. He performed better in front of large crowds, but singing in a concert was a very different matter. But Ewington and Jeanette had a plan. When they were placed together, the two were divine. Jonathan's confidence was bolstered by Charlotte. Charlotte was also at a different level with Jonathan. However, there was an issue. The two of them enjoyed performing alone and were confident in their identities as artists. Their tastes in art were not the same. Because she was passionate about acting, Charlotte gravitated toward musical theater, while Jonathan was a fan of classical opera. Nevertheless, they overcame their personal tastes to create something exquisite. Regardless of the circumstance or incident, they remained unstoppable and kept performing together. The audience was enthralled when the pair took the stage together. Together, they sang the prayer that Andrea Belli and Celine Dion initially sang during their music exams. Jeanette requested that they play the same song for her church wedding ceremony because of how captivating their performance was. They had to split up even though they were a wonderful match. They started trying out for art colleges at the age of 14. Jonathan tried out for a junior position at each of London's 4 main music conservatories. All the schools accepted him because of his unquestionable talent, but Jonathan only had one in mind: the Royal Academy of Music. After selecting them, he started training. Charlotte pursued her goal of combining singing and acting, enrolling at London's arts educational institutions to study musical theater. After staying in contact, the two decided they desired greater notoriety. However, how would they obtain it? The Got Talent series was founded by Simon Cowell, who debuted America's Got Talent, the brand's first show, in 2006. Because of the show's enormous popularity, Simon started Britain's Got Talent in 2007, which also proved to be a success. A vocalist was the show's inaugural winner, and each year a singer placed among the top 3. They got an idea from this. They'd try out for the show. They didn't mind that they would be battling against the greatest of the best. Not everyone shared their belief in their skill and potential as a team. It was the identical response the judges gave to Susan Boyle, the third series runner-up in 2009. In 2012, the two signed up for Britain's Got Talent's 6th season. as Charlotte and Jonathan. And shortly after, they appeared on stage for the first time. But the judges didn't have high expectations for them. As Jonathan seemed ungainly, overweight, and poorly dressed, they rolled their eyes, anticipating that his shyness would overwhelm him. They believed that the performance they were about to see would be a complete bust. They possessed a hidden weapon, but they still had a lot of work ahead of them. They were fully aware of the song that would increase their chances of passing the audition stage. They had done it flawlessly twice on important occasions. The audience fell silent as they started singing this song. The two drew their emotions everywhere and took them on a wonderful, heartfelt journey. When these two sung the prayer, it was impossible to avoid experiencing intense emotions. Even the judges who had first questioned them were utterly enthralled. When the pair finished, everyone was in awe, including the stoic Simon Cowell and the judges. But Simon was having trouble. He thought Jonathan was being held back by Charlotte. Remember that these two have varied musical interests and are accustomed to working as solo musicians. People's egos might be stimulated by hearing something like this. Jonathan might think he was the better artist as a result. Simon stepped up and demanded that Jonathan stop seeing Charlotte. He remarked he had not heard such a wonderful opera voice in years, and even likened Jonathan to the great Luciano Pavarotti. For Jonathan, the decision of whether to follow Cowell's advice or remain with his relationship was crucial. Jonathan made the decision to stay in Charlotte. Despite his talent, he lacked Charlotte's enthusiasm for the pair. She had more confidence than he did. No matter how good he was, he might have to leave early without Charlotte. As a result, the two kept singing together, but Simon's words stuck with them. It appeared as though they thought that if Simon was considering their separation, the other judges would also be following suit. Although Charlotte appeared to be doubting herself, doubt had been successfully sown. As a result, they changed their names to Jonathan and Charlotte. Now Charlotte was under a great deal of strain. Her confidence was rattled for the first time in a long time. But she wasn't going to quit up. She and Jonathan performed Lucio Dalla's Caruso during the semifinals. The judges and audience were enthralled with the performance, which was inspirational. The two have somehow managed to surpass their audition performance. Judge Alicia Dixon commended Charlotte for overcoming the pressure she felt to stand tall with Jonathan, and commended Jonathan for his strong performance. She admired Charlotte's refusal to be sidetracked by remarks that Jonathan was the more gifted of the two. She informed them they have a wonderful chemistry, and commended them for keeping their friendship going. Charlotte needed to hear this, but she was correct. The judges did believe that she was preventing Jonathan from advancing. Although Judge Amanda Holden acknowledged that she agreed with Simon Cowell, she also acknowledged that she now felt that she and Jonathan were destined to collaborate. Charlotte was more relieved after hearing Amanda's words, but she was still thinking about Simon Cowell. She desired to listen to him. He complied with her request to retract his statements. Simon acknowledged his error as well. He said he now understood their chemistry and admired the support they had for one another, and he commended the two for sticking together. Was Simon previously manipulating the two? Did he try to instigate conflict between the two, or was he testing their ability to overcome obstacles? David Williams, the last judge, took pleasure in the way the two of them disproved Simon. David even prophesied that they would win the finals, and they nearly did. He said, "I was in full support of them, despite not knowing what they were singing," and called them both fantastic singers. They repeated the prayer in the final, but this time it was on a higher level, and everyone believed they would prevail. Supporters got up to applaud them. Excitement filled the auditorium, but in the end, they came in second, almost missing out on the victory to Ashley Butler and her adorable dog, Putsy. The fact that they lost disappointed the fans, but Charlotte had a different perspective. She was thankful for the experience and pleased that she and Jonathan placed second out of 70,000 competitors. Jonathan wasn't as excited as she was. His stomach dropped, and he experienced intense heartache. Despite their best efforts, they were defeated. Was it possible that he believed Charlotte had defeated him? Did he subconsciously believe she was preventing him from moving forward as well? Although Jonathan refrained from crying on stage, he was unable to control his tears after leaving. To be second, he had confronted his concerns and stepped outside of his comfort zone. He praised their animal-themed objective, which he said he could never do, and congratulated the winners. Jonathan was unable to prevent himself from feeling down, but he was able to get over it in time for the next step. Simon Cowell came over to Jonathan and Charlotte the following day. He gave them a recording contract for £1 million with his record label, Psycho, and wanted them as a pair. Despite the size of the contract, Jonathan benefited more from it than Charlotte did, because it excluded musical theater, which Charlotte loved. Jonathan and Charlotte, however, stood together and declared that they will perform musical theater together in the future. The two started working right away, and on September 24, 2012, their debut album was released in the US and the UK. A month later, Simon regretted suggesting that they break up, since he was desperate to make the partnership successful. Charlotte felt vindicated when he apologized to the two of them. Now that they were celebrities, they were living fast-paced lives while still managing to be teenagers. People learned more about the teenagers after an ITV program about them was broadcast. The two desired more, even with their newfound fame. They were determined to learn from the finest, since they felt they weren't yet fully developed singers. In order to conclude their musical education, they traveled to France and Italy to attend a finishing school for talent show alumni. In Paris, the two had tuition with renowned tenor Rolando Villazon, and were coached by Leone Maggiera, the vocal instructor for Luciano Pavarotti. They also traveled to La Scala, the birthplace of Italian opera. Katherine Jenkins also gave them career guidance. But no counsel could alter the desire the two had to follow their separate trajectories. It was obvious that Charlotte couldn't fulfill her desire to perform musical theater as long as she and Jonathan were a pair. The pair kept on their collaboration, and on October 14, 2013, their second album was released. It was no longer preventable at this stage. The future of the pair had to be discussed in an awkward way. Additionally, Sony provided them with the chance to speak in February 2014. There was a condition in the new contract that Sony offered the two of them. They were forced to split up. By now, both of them had come to terms with the fact that it would occur. They had reached their zenith, and neither of them wanted to do anything new. Since high school, they have collaborated and benefited from one another's skills. The bashful Jonathan has gained enough self-assurance to admit that he was also keen to try new things. After enduring constant criticism that she lacked Jonathan's talent, Charlotte no longer felt insecure, but rather more confident in her own skills. The two said in a statement that they were excited to return to the recording studio, and that the solo record deals they each received from Sony Classical were the most thrilling thing ever. Charlotte would finally have the opportunity to try musical theater, but as you will see, things didn't turn out the way she had hoped. She continued to enjoy popularity as a singer after releasing her debut solo album, Solitaire, in July 2014. It appears that Simon was correct after all. Did their money from their Sony contract really play a role in their breakup? Or did they wish to attempt something different? What are your thoughts? Given how the two acted toward one another during the breakup, it might be something more. Something that was not expressed. Later in the video, we will explain that to you. Jonathan didn't go into the studio right away. Now that he was at his most courageous, he made the decision to embark on a UK album pre-release tour. He started his career in the United States and performed at the 2014 Muhammad Ali Celebrity Fight Night in Arizona, California, and Florida. He became extremely sought after as a result of the notoriety he received. He was ecstatic, but this was only the beginning. Tenor, Jonathan's first solo album, was a huge success when it was released in October 2014. Jonathan delayed more than a year before releasing his next album, Believe, in 2016. One reviewer described his genius as follows: "Here is a new star on the vocal scene," and his first solo album attests to his miraculous talent. Jonathan was said to have a very diverse, suitably robust, silky and creamy sound on this well-received CD. In 2018, he performed as a solo artist for the first time in the United States, bringing his smooth voice with him. He wasn't the only one who was brilliant, but that performance was amazing. Charlotte was living the life she had always wanted. 4 years after their breakup, she finally got a chance to try her hand at musical theater, making her stage debut in The Boy in the Dress. Since then, she has starred in A Midsummer Night's Dream at the Royal Shakespeare Company, Heathers and Sunset Boulevard, a musical, with Nicole Scherzinger. Following his performance in the USA, Jonathan gave a 3-part show at the Winter Garden Theatre in Canada in June 2019. He wowed the crowd with opera sections, Disney tunes, and American songbook favorites. The two ex-partners were prospering, but regrettably, their prosperity came at a price. They became disconnected and hardly communicated. As of right now, it appears like the two will not be performing a duet anytime soon. Conversations between the two dwindled to almost nothing, as they both claimed to be too busy to stay in frequent contact. Neither side made any calls, not even during the holidays. How could they have been so disconnected due to their busy schedules? Did the two quarrel in secret? Since 2006 they have been friends, therefore it doesn't seem very credible that they are simply drifting apart due to work. Their preferences were a major factor in the divide, even if it appeared to be due to their desire to try new things. Furthermore, they were no longer in need of one another. Did Jonathan's condition have an impact on their friendship, or was it merely a transactional one? Jonathan has always struggled with his weight, and his first appearance in America didn't help him manage it. His weight spiraled out of control as he became enmeshed in the American fast food culture. Jonathan was determined to live a healthier lifestyle, so he started exercising and consciously reduced his food intake. But Jonathan wasn't reliable at first. Later he adopted a new lifestyle that involved 10,000 steps a day, even if it meant pacing back and forth in a single room, which helped him become more consistent. Made significant weight loss. He acknowledges that he still has a long way to go, but he isn't stopping. Jonathan is more conscious of and takes care of his mental health in the same way that he does his physical health. Shortly after his birthday in 2022, Jonathan was diagnosed with autism. For this reason, he may find it challenging to make acquaintances. Rather, he travels with his entire family, who serve as his pillars. Because of his autism, he struggled with shyness throughout his early years. Since learning about his autism, Jonathan has fully mastered himself, and Charlotte was important in assisting him in this early process. Would he and Charlotte reunite for another duet, in your opinion?